DLC is a pretty standard part of just about any major video game these days. Ordinarily, developers use DLC to provide supplementary content. But with Mass Effect 3, BioWare did something quite different. They used two pieces of DLC, Leviathan and Citadel, to address criticisms about the base game. Now included as part of the full game in last year's Mass Effect Legendary Edition, these two DLCs feel like seamless additions to the game's narrative that greatly enhance the overall experience, to the point where I don't feel nearly the same way about Mass Effect 3 as I did when it came out back in 2012. Much of this has to do with the way Leviathan, in particular, provides players with a fascinating journey into the deepest depths of the game's lore that not only explains the game's ending in a more digestible format, but recontextualizes it as well. If you so much as wandered onto the internet back in March of 2012, you probably heard a thing or two about the reaction to the ending of Mass Effect 3. While most players agreed that the majority of the game was strong, the ending was derided by fans and critics alike. For those unfamiliar with the title, Mass Effect 3 is the culminating entry in a trilogy about Commander Shepard, an RPG character created by the player, and his battles against the Reapers, a group of sentient machines who annihilate all organic life in the Milky Way galaxy every 50,000 years. For the better part of 5 years and over 150 hours of gameplay, players have been asking themselves why the Reapers would do this. What purpose does an unending cycle of galactic genocide serve? For the first two games, players were met with a response common in cosmic horror.
"You cannot comprehend us,"
the Reapers said.
"Your feeble human minds will never understand our purpose."
Such a response was effective, as it left the Reapers' motivation a mystery for longtime fans to look forward to discovering in the third game. It is, effectively, a reproduction of J.J. Abrams' famous mystery box technique. But as fans of Lost and the Star Wars sequel trilogy learned the hard way, sometimes it's still important to stick the landing. And so Mass Effect 3 opened with an incredibly difficult task. How the hell do you explain the Reaper harvest? At the end of Mass Effect 3, we finally get our answer. After deploying the Crucible, Commander Shepard is met by the artificial intelligence that created the Reapers eons ago. Known as the Catalyst, it appears to Shepard in the form of a boy he saw die at the hands of the Reapers at the beginning of the game. The Catalyst explains to Shepard that it created the Reapers in order to fulfill its mission, to protect and preserve organic life at all costs. Over time, it explains, it had observed that organic life constantly creates synthetic life, robots, androids, things of that nature, that in turn rebel and destroy their creators. The Catalyst viewed this cycle as inevitable, and thus determined that the best way to preserve organic life would be to harvest all of it every 50,000 years. This is the time frame that it takes for organics to create synthetics powerful enough to destroy them, and preserve it in Reaper form. As Shepard found out at the end of Mass Effect 2, Reapers are made from the genetic material of harvested species, making them more hybrids of synthetic and organic life than strictly synthetics. It's a convoluted tale, one that led to the incredible meme featured here. And it's made increasingly bizarre by the Star Child, who is far from the strong messenger this reveal required. A common criticism of the reveal is that it seemed random, out of place. Such a critique is fair. While Mass Effect 1 is pretty upfront about the theme of synthetics versus organics, Mass Effect 2 rarely references it outside of the Quarian-Geth conflict, and even dismisses it somewhat when it reveals that the Reapers are hybrids of synthetic and organic life. It does, of course, appear more frequently in Mass Effect 3, namely the conclusion of the aforementioned conflict, which reaches its climax on the Quarian homeworld of Rannoch, but outside of this, the idea that organic and synthetic life cannot peacefully coexist is mainly brought up in conversations aboard the Normandy here and there, not major thematic beats. And depending on the approach your Shepard takes, whether they end the Morning Wars, support Legion's personhood, and support the relationship between Joker and EDI, it's entirely possible that the player came to a much different conclusion. That synthetic life is just as legitimate as organic life. All of this is to say that at the end of the Mass Effect trilogy, after countless hours of gameplay, falling in love with squad mates, platonically or otherwise, it's entirely reasonable for players to sigh and say, wait a minute. The Reaper's purpose was to stop a side plot that I resolved hours ago? That's the big, unknowable, unfathomable thing they've been up to this whole time? Naturally, this left a lot of people profoundly disappointed. While there are plenty of other criticisms about the Reaper's purpose, that's the one I see most often. And in my mind, the issue with the reveal is not the content itself, but rather its timing. Most authors love dropping a huge plot twist at the end of their works. It's why films like Memento and Shutter Island were so popular and won so many awards. But not every reveal should be at the end of a story. Sometimes, reveals that are connected to side plots or might be a bit harder to tease out are better positioned away from the final act. Think about the most famous movie twist of all time, the "I am your father" scene from Star Wars Episode V, The Empire Strikes Back. Though it may take place at the end of the film, in the greater landscape of the original trilogy, it's closer to the middle. Though it's a reveal that has become a well-known piece of pop culture, it's important to remember that it likely came off as a bit confusing at the time. A New Hope is full of contradictory statements about Luke's father, which really only makes sense when the viewer is given time to properly digest the surprise and connect the dots. By positioning the reveal here, it recontextualizes everything that's come before and allows the viewer to prepare for what might happen next. That is what the Leviathan DLC does for Mass Effect 3. In the DLC, Shepard goes on a galaxy-wide detective mission to find the Leviathans, the species that created the Reapers eons ago. Upon finding them at the bottom of an ocean planet, they reveal the Reaper's purpose: to protect and preserve organic life at all costs, just as the Star Child explains at the end of the game. While there's no wrong time to play Leviathan, it doesn't become available until after Priority Palaven, but can't be accessed after the attack on the Cerberus headquarters, which serves as the game's point of no return. By positioning Leviathan here, firmly in the game's second act, the player has plenty of time to properly digest the implications of the Reaper's purpose on all three games, which amounts to nearly 200 hours of gameplay, depending on how much of a completionist you are. The player can consider its impact on the Geth-Quarian conflict, EDI, Project Overlord, and so much more. And when they at last reach the Star Child, the convoluted purpose of the Reapers is far less of a confusing and bitter pill to swallow. It's also just an all-around better way to deliver the message. The Star Child is the end result of a symbol that never quite finds its footing. I don't hate the visions Shepard has of the child throughout the game. I interpret them as brief moments of doubt from an otherwise confident commander. But to top it off by using him as the catalyst here feels a bit awkward. And listening to a kid explain the greatest mystery of the Milky Way galaxy is even more so. It's just such a bizarre way to reveal such an important message. The Leviathan, however, explains the Reaper's origin with the serious tone this reveal deserves. There's a certain majesty to it, as the so-called apex species demonstrates the incredible power that allowed them to take control of the galaxy in the time before the Reapers. It's much easier to accept such a convoluted plot point from a cold, unfeeling, omnipotent creature than an AI presenting itself as cosmic Caillou. At the same time, if you closely examine the Leviathan's words, you'll discover that what it says actually reframes the game's ending entirely, presenting the player with a closing message far more in line with Mass Effect's central themes. When Shepard asks the Leviathan how it could be so foolish as to entrust an AI with coming up with a solution to the ongoing conflict between synthetics and organics, it says,
"You cannot conceive of a galaxy that bends to your will. Every creature, every nation, every planet we discovered became our tools. We were above the concerns of lesser species. The intelligence was envisioned as simply another tool."
In other words, the Leviathans believed that they were so perfect, so infallible, that they thought that what had happened to the so-called lesser species couldn't possibly happen to them. They dwelt in an echo chamber, beholden only to themselves and ignorant of the thoughts and ideas of other species. There was no diversity at the top, only the Leviathans. In Shepard's Milky Way galaxy, that's not the case. Rather than having one apex species at the top of the food chain, there are multiple species running the show, each of them with their own unique strengths and weaknesses. You could argue that the Asari or the humans rise above the rest, and the game does assert this at various points, but neither one dominates the other species to the same extent as the Leviathans did in their time. Throughout the Mass Effect series, the Krogans, Turians, Solarians, Asari, and humans check and balance each other in a way that highlights their diversity. Had any one species tried to do what the Leviathans did, the others would have stopped it from happening. The Citadel Council is far from an effective governing body, but at least it's not a monocultured echo chamber where a single species rules over all the others. It has its issues, but its diversity cannot be overstated. And the importance of diversity is, and always has been, one of Mass Effect's core tenets. Commander Shepard can be any gender, any race. Whether Paragon or Renegade, Shepard brings a crew of men, women, white people, black people, people of color, members of the LGBTQIA community, people with disabilities, and a wide array of alien species with them on their 3 journeys on the Normandy. At the end of their journey, with the Crucible complete, Shepard has the potential to bring with them not just a diverse crew, but a diverse army made up of former enemies, like the Geth and the Quarians, the Solarians and the Krogan, humans and Turians, as they face off with the Reapers for the final time. And if they've completed the DLC, then even the Leviathans will be at their side. Though they might claim that this is out of their determination to prove that they are still the apex species, by joining the war effort, they are accepting a place alongside the other species and agreeing to work together as equals. It's an incredibly fitting conclusion to their eons-long game of galactic hide-and-seek, as they bear witness to the fact that what ends the Reaper cycles is what would have prevented them from happening in the first place. Because the Mass Effect trilogy isn't really about the inevitability of conflict between synthetics and organics. It's about the importance of all living things coming together to work towards building a better, brighter future. And it's the Leviathan DLC that makes this so abundantly clear. Thanks for watching. Hey there everyone. If you enjoyed this video, then please be sure to like and subscribe. I've got lots more videos on the way. My next video will be about one of the major bosses from Elden Ring and some similarities I see between him and some of the major themes from George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. Hopefully we'll have some DLC news by then. But hey, until next time, I'll see you later.